WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
Hello, everybody! This is WVUA 90.7 FM, The Capstone, and welcome to episode number 27 of the Full Court Press Podcast. My name is Jamie Martinez, and I'm joined by Alex Chasen and Nick Atkinson. On today's episode, look forward to league news and our random NBA thoughts. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at FCP_podcast_UA and on TikTok at FCP_podcast. With that being said, let's get into it.
Stephen Curry is returning, everyone. This Sunday, he is planning to return against the Los Angeles Lakers per Chris Haynes of Bleacher Report. I'm going to start off with Nick. How do you feel about Stephen Curry returning to the Warriors? Obviously, this is all good news, but will this propel them to be an even better seed than where they are right now, or do you think they're going to stick to around the 5th, 6th seed, maybe fall back a little bit?
They'll probably lose the first two games, but then after that, they're probably just going to continue to be one of the best teams in the NBA and get back up to where they were by last season, be probably a top 3 seed in the West. Probably. Because
the West is so tight, as we've talked about probably every single podcast since probably a month into the season. It really hasn't changed. The West is insanely tight. Everyone from even the 12th seed to around the 3rd seed could switch in about 2 days. They could switch spots, which is crazy to see. I don't think we've ever seen this in the NBA season. This is everyone keep their eyes on your TV because this season has come down to the wire from the play-in up to the 3rd seed. The top 2 seeds are pretty safe, but under that could switch any day. Jumping into some other injury news, but this is not a return. This is a leaving the court, and it's really sad to see this, but Jonathan Isaac will be out for the rest of the season, needing a repair on a torn left adductor muscle. Brutal setback for Jonathan Isaac. He's only 25 years old. He only played 11 games this season after missing 2 years with a torn ACL. Jamie, I know you like Jonathan Isaac. We talked about him on the last podcast when we did our power forward rankings. This is just, we hate to see it.
Yeah, Jonathan Isaac's one of my favorite forwards in the league. He's so dynamic, both offensively and especially defensively, who, right. I think a lot of people kind of assumed he'd be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate if he stayed healthy throughout his career. He's only 25, and he missed already 2 straight years with an ACL injury, and now you're...
Basically 3 now.
Yeah, now you're at 3. You only played 11 games. This is extremely depressing to see, not only if you're a Magic fan, but if you're just an NBA fan. You don't want to ever see anybody go through, this sort of trauma, honestly. So all my prayers go out to Jonathan Isaac, and I hope he comes back stronger next season.
Yeah, I don't even know if you can come back at this point. I hope he does, but it's
injuries have been killing the NBA this year. Yeah. Same thing with Lonzo Ball. It's just terrible.
Lonzo should be back, but it's just Jonathan Isaac, how much can you really keep putting your body through where you say, this is just enough, I'm not going to be able to stay healthy. And it just sucks to see for someone with such high praise coming out of Florida State, really playing his role the first 2 years in the NBA, then all of a sudden injuries, and he just hasn't really returned to that Defensive Player of the Year form. Mm-hmm. Jumping into some other news, Nerlens Noel signs with the Brooklyn Nets about a week or 2 after being waived from the Detroit Pistons. This is a solid signing for a Nets team that just absolutely handled my Boston Celtics last night. The Boston Celtics were up 25 points, choked it, of course, and the Brooklyn Nets came back and won by around 10 or 11 points last night. With that said, this is a good signing to fill out their center depth. They have Claxton, who's playing amazing. Not quite all-star level yet, but definitely DPOY level on that end. They also have, Cam Johnson, who's more of a small forward, but he is playing that power forward role. But they need definitely another big man in Brooklyn. This definitely helps him out on that front. How do you feel about this one, Nick?
About Goran Dragic?
No, Nerlens Noel.
I feel like it's kind of a weird signing for them because they're just, I guess they're trying to get to the playoffs, but I feel like he could have provided something better to a team like the Clippers or a team like the Kings or just a team that needs another backup center. So
yeah, I could agree with that, but he'll get more minutes with the Brooklyn Nets. He'll definitely be their backup center and play 20-plus minutes a night. Now we jump into Goran Dragic. Nick was jumping ahead with us, but Goran Dragic is expected to sign with the Milwaukee Bucks. They're emerging as a strong front-runner per Adrian Wojnarowski. It's not official yet. He has not signed the paper. He has not put his pen and ink down on that paper to be a Milwaukee Buck player. But with that said, it's the most likely option for him. Now, Nick, since you were ready to say it, how would you feel about Goran Dragic?
I don't know if I like it that much because I really like what I've seen from Devon Carter this season playing the backup point guard. Yeah. I think he's probably one of the best backup point guards in the NBA. He's 3-and-D. He just gets the job done. I don't know if I'm not in love with the backup small backcourt of Goran Dragic and Javon Carter. It just doesn't seem like I don't know. It just seems like too much talent to not and would not work, basically, kind of.
Any takes on that, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a weird signing, but I mean, I think people forget how important Dragic was to the Heat finals run in 2020. He was a major contributor to that, and I think, maybe if he only plays 10 minutes a game, I think he could be a decent contributor to the Bucks if they make a finals run this year too. So it's a weird signing, I agree, but, it's a vet presence, and I think he can help in different ways.
Very, very, very good point. Kyrie and Luka Doncic have a historic game together, the most points by any Maverick duo ever. Kyrie and Luka combined for a total of 82 points in their win over Knicks 76ers. With that said, Kyrie had 40 points and 6 assists on 6 from 8 from three-pointers. Luka had 42 points, 12 assists, 7 from 13 from 3. Nick, were you watching this game, and what's your take on the Kyrie and Luka dominance over your 76ers?
I did watch the game, but we played good. Tyrese Maxey played pretty good. Harden, I don't know. He continues to kind of make me question why he's still considered a high-level player because he just makes so many mistakes. But at the end of the day, these are two of the best scorers in the NBA. So, I mean...
And they finally showed it together.
Exactly. That's what I expect out of them. I think this is probably their first win. I think it, seriously is their first win together. So I guess it's good to get it against us. We're already, the third seed in the East, so we can take a couple games, so... It's just good to see them actually acclimating together.
Now I have another question for you, Nick. Great game from Russell Westbrook last night, 27-10, as we talked about before the podcast. But they are still... Well, actually, no, I'll save the record for later when we talk about random NBA thoughts. But more, Westbrook, how do you feel about the disrespect of Draymond Green not guarding him and just leaving him behind the three-point line? I don't know if anyone's seen the video, but basically they were playing the Warriors, and the whole defense was just in the paint, guarding everyone else. Draymond Green left Russell Westbrook to stay behind the three-point line at the top, and he was wide open, and he didn't take the shot. Isaiah Thomas tweeted saying, "Come on, Russ, we got to step it up and shoot that. That ain't cool. OKC Russ is firing that even if he's 1 for 10. Mindset and confidence is everything." That's from Isaiah Thomas, my boy IT4. How do you feel about that whole situation?
Well, Russell Westbrook Bradley Beal came out and said this, that he always wants to make the mistake before his teammate makes it. So I guess he was trying to look for something else to pass to because he just didn't like the shot. I mean, it's as simple as that. If you looking at a three and you're like, okay, I don't like how this looks.
But he's wide open.
Pass it out. I mean, but maybe you just don't like the way it looks. That's how I look at it. If I'm wide open, I don't like the way that the goal is looking. I'm like, okay, I don't think I'm making the shot. I'm gonna go and try to pass it out somewhere that has a better looking shot.
But OKC Russ was either gonna shoot that or he'd drive to the paint, or he would drive and take a little midi.
But that's like a top 5 player in the NBA. This is
He's older.
Yeah, it's just...
I know, but still, Russ has still been shooting.
It's not his role. So, I mean, I'm fine with it. He plays his role. He gets his assist. He's been playing really good despite the team playing bad. It's just everybody else besides him and Kawhi has been just terrible, including Paul George.
Yeah, jumping into Jalen McDaniels, this is just a random, some statistics I came across on Twitter. His defense this season has been mind-blowing against guys like Jalen Green, Damian Lillard, Luka Doncic, Kawhi Leonard, De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton, LeBron James, Klay Thompson, my boy JB, Jaylen Brown, Stephen Curry, and Donovan Mitchell. He has been clamping them up. No one has been scoring more than 41%, that being Kawhi Leonard, 7 for 17. The lowest being Donovan Mitchell, only shooting 16% on Jalen McDaniels. We've talked about him before on our last podcast with the power forward rankings, and we talked about his great defense, great perimeter defense, great paint defense. He is proving it. LeBron James is 3 for 10 on him. Guys like Jaylen Brown are 2 for 7. That's 28%. Damian Lillard, 9 for 22. He just dropped 71 points, and he's been on a tear this past 2 months. But Jalen McDaniels has decided that, nope, he's capable of stopping these guys. Any takes from either of you on his great defense, we know this is what he can do. But these stats right here are the proof in the pudding. I don't know. I think it's insane to see these real stats of these top-end players not performing against Jalen.
Yeah, I think Jaden McDaniels...
Jaden, I should say.
I think he's been a very important piece to the Timberwolves in them being a very sneaky team, playing really well against the great teams out there. They just beat the Clippers, they've beaten some really good teams over the season, and I think he's a very important piece to that. Locking down their superstars is a very important piece in winning games, and he's been doing that. I do want to mention that De'Aaron Fox is one of the highest percentages in this list of people,
40%.
so had to bring that up. But I think he's very slept on in that DPOY candidacy. Just because he's on a losing team doesn't mean he shouldn't get the recognition he deserves. So big shout out to Jaden McDaniels. He's one of my favorite players in the league, and it's great to see he's finally getting that recognition for being a lockdown forward.
Yeah, my bad. I said Jalen McDaniels. That's his brother on the 76ers, but this is Jaden McDaniels on the Timberwolves. The D and the L. I got the dyslexia. I mix it up a little bit. Anyways, moving on. The Knicks are 8-0 and 11 games above 500, and they're 8-0 since acquiring Josh Hart.
It's crazy.
Crazy. Nick, Jamie, either of you have any takes on this 8-0 team since acquiring Josh Hart and 11 games above 500?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the real deal. This is not just like a few years ago when they just had Julius Randle and some other guys. They have now Jalen Brunson, close to All-Star. Julius Randle was an All-Star. And Josh Hart is one of the best 3-and-D players in the entire league, and he's moving his way up with this record right now.
I think this is really cool to see just because the Knicks have gone through so much in their history, from being one of the most hated teams in the league to now being kind of everybody's top favorite teams. Just because they've been an underdog over the last 10, 15 years, and they're finally showing people what they can do. So big shout out to the Knicks, 10 games or 11 games above 500. They're 8-0 in their last 8. And, I can't wait to see that streak be broken against Sacramento on a nationally televised game.
When's that?
We did it in our marquee matchup.
For the week? I think it's this coming week.
It's
right?
the end of the week, I believe.
All right, so we're going to look forward to that one there. But the Knicks are on fire, and they're the real deal. They just beat the Celtics. They play the Celtics again, I believe. It would have been yesterday for the people listening. I believe they play them Sunday. But anyways, let's jump into Nick, and let's hear what he's got to say. What are we doing today?
We're doing our random NBA thoughts, so I'm going to get us started with my first one. And this is kind of I feel like this is one of the weirdest, things in the NBA. So both Jokic and Carmelo wore 15 as their time as them being the star of the team. So I don't know whose jersey they're going to retire because Carmelo's probably done in the NBA.
Right.
But Jokic is only 28 years old, so I think that it's probably leaning towards Jokic, but I just feel like it's a little disrespectful to Carmelo after multiple, deep playoff runs, all-star games, bringing them back into relevancy after losing to Kemba Mutombo and all them. So I don't know. I just think it's a little
My
weird.
take is, and this is a very, I think Jamie would probably have a more professional take, but in NBA 2K, right, when Carmelo Anthony retires, Jokic just, because he retires, they retire his number, Jokic just gets a random number. So obviously that probably won't happen in real life. My take would probably be, I don't know, I think they just retire both and let them both wear 15. And I think it'll be one of those things where there'll be a shared number in the band, in the rafters, and it just says Jokic and Anthony, because they both have done so much for the individual times in Denver. They both have done a ton. So
I think that's what they got to do. Just because Carmelo, as a rookie, did so much for that team. Like Nick said, so many deep playoff runs, being one of their best scorers in their team's history. But then you have Jokic, who now later on, as Carmelo's done with the team, has won 2 MVPs and done so much in his career. It's going to be tough. Yeah, it might be 3 this year. I hope not. But
I think if one of them wins a championship, that's when you're like, maybe we can just put one up instead of the other. But since they both have not, either of them won a championship with Denver or at all,
I think you just give them their own each individual banner. I think if you do retire Carmelo Anthony's number while he's still there, then you let Jokic continue wearing out that.
Yeah, kind of like
number.
they've done with if you're already wearing 24 or 8 or 6 for Bill Russell and then Kobe there, you can wear it until you retire.
Yeah.
So maybe they could do something like that.
I think that's what they're going to do with Jokic, and then put his name up in the rafters right after.
Yeah, I agree with that. Moving on to my first random NBA thought. All right, when will the legendary teams like the Celtics and Lakers stop retiring numbers? So similar, we just talked about retiring numbers, but when will teams like the Celtics and Lakers stop retiring them? Because eventually, there's only so many numbers you can wear. Will they be forced on retire numbers? Let me give you some stats here. The Celtics have the most numbers retired of any professional sports team in North America, that being 23 numbers. The Lakers only have 12. You'd think they have a lot more, but no, they only have 12 numbers retired. Celtics have 23 numbers retired. That's almost a quarter of all the numbers you can wear in the NBA, from 00 to 99. So almost a quarter of them you can't even wear on the Celtics roster. What are your takes on what they should do? Should they unretire them, or what's your opinion?
Oh, man, that's tough. Especially for the Celtics. I know we were talking about it the other day.
Right. Walking from math class.
Yeah, walking back from math class to go get your lunch. That's a really tough decision they have to make because you don't really want to have to unretire numbers because that can be kind of disrespectful to the player that, got retired. But at some point, I feel like you just got to stop retiring numbers altogether, which is going to be tough for guys like Tatum and Brown who might have their numbers retired by the end of their careers. But at some point, you got to just stop because like 15, 20 years from now, there's going to be no numbers left. So I just say you got to stop altogether if you're a franchise with that many numbers retired.
Yeah, I feel like I feel the same way, especially for a team with that many retired jerseys. I just feel like you retired Tatum and Brown if they win the championship, and then after that, just probably nobody else.
Because is Ray Allen going to get his number retired?
Exactly.
They just retired Paul Pierce a few years ago, then KG this past season. So I think you got to give it.
Probably Rondo pretty soon too.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like how far down the rabbit hole can you go? Now I'd say if Brown and Tatum win a championship, even if they don't, I feel like they'll get their numbers retired just because they've done so much for the organization. Especially Tatum, he has hit so many different statistical records for the Celtics. But then after that, how far do you go? Do you give it to Marcus Smart because he's going to probably be the key of us winning a championship? You know what I mean?
I don't know.
And Marcus Smart is Mr. Celtic, just like Tommy Heinsohn was.
I don't know. I think if Marcus Smart did the same thing for any other franchise, he can get his number retired. But just because the Celtics have so many numbers retired, I don't know if he could do it.
I think Celtics fans...
I think they dug themselves in a rabbit hole.
I agree, but I think the Celtics fans and the organization are going to want Smart's number retired. But anyways, it's an interesting thought to really think about. My opinion is I think after Tatum and Brown and or Marcus Smart, I think they're going to retire all three of those numbers, or at least Brown and Tatum, and then after that, they're going to have to really think back and be like, what do we do now? You can't wear 0, you can't wear 7, you can't wear maybe 36, you can't wear 20, you can't wear half of normal numbers people would wear. People are going to start wearing 55 and 57 for the Celtics organization.
That's
so
weird.
It's going to be interesting to see what they do, but that is my first random NBA thought.
All right, so my first thought, what if the Brooklyn Nets don't go through with one of the biggest NBA trades of all time and they don't trade for Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Jason Terry, taking them from the Celtics? What would the NBA look like?
A lot of Celtics talk today.
Yeah, what would the NBA look like today? I think it would look extremely different. I don't think the Celtics are nearly as good as they are now because they don't get those picks for Brown and Tatum. Do the Nets have Brown and Tatum right now? Do they make those same picks?
They probably weren't smart enough to draft them.
I don't think they would have made the same picks.
They'd probably keep the first pick in the 2017 draft and draft Markelle Fultz. And the Sixers would end up with Jason Tatum.
Probably. And then KD and Kyrie probably never end up as Nets. Neither does James Harden.
And Kyrie never gets to the Celtics. Gordon Hayward never comes to the Celtics.
So how different would the NBA look?
It would look very different. Honestly, Gordon Hayward would have still came to the Celtics because he thought he was playing with Isaiah Thomas originally. Yeah. So that might have still happened. But still, imagine if we had Isaiah Thomas that long with that injury history. Both the Celtics and Nets would look completely backwards.
Yeah.
I think the Sixers might be better because they had that third pick in that draft, and they would definitely take Tatum.
Yeah.
Because Lonzo Ball was going to the Lakers no matter what. Yeah. Markelle Fultz was the first pick no matter what. So, excuse me. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I agree. I think so. I think that Tatum would probably be on the Sixers right now. And
then in that draft, who were the first two picks with Brown? Before Brown?
Brandon Ingram and Ben Simmons.
Yeah. Like, how different would
I think that would have stayed the same. So the Nets probably would have got Jaylen Brown.
And, like, every single NBA draft would look different because all the picks would be swapped. Free agencies, like, all over the league would look different, all because of one trade that happened. So the NBA, as we know today, would be a completely different landscape if it were not for the Brooklyn Nets being so stupid and trading for a bunch of old men.
You want to know everything we got, the Celtics got? So this was hypothetically would be everything the Nets got. 2014, the Celtics drafted James Young. He's irrelevant. He's not in the NBA anymore. So it didn't start off hard. But the Celtics used their other first-rounder for Marcus Smart, and they got Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and they sent Cleveland Cavaliers the Celtics pick that they got from way back then for Kyrie Irving.
Yep.
So
Kyrie never becomes one.
Very interesting. Very, very good first one there, Jamie.
All right, next up,
why are the Knicks so hated on? Like, why does everybody kind of, like, look for any sort of way to attack them? I feel like even when they're good, people are always, like, in Instagram comments and, like, just hating on them. And, like, even when they're bad, it's like, oh, this team is poverty. And I get they only won one championship, and the players kind of act entitled a little bit, like the past players. But still, I think that this team is one of the best historic teams of all time.
I disagree.
So I don't get the hate.
I think just because I think they get the hate just because they are such a big market team in such a big town like New York. They're gonna get the hate regardless. And they haven't won really anything in a very long time.
2 championships.
Yeah,
70 and 73.
Yeah, they haven't won a championship in 50 years. So I think a lot of the hate stems from them being such a big market team and not winning anything relevant over the last 50 years. So despite them having really likable players like Jeremy Lin and Carmelo Anthony, Pat Ewing, all those big name players over time, they're still gonna get the hate just because they can't get the big job done.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't hate them, and I'm from Boston. That's a big darn rivalry with every team in Boston versus every team in New York. So I don't even hate them. It's just, you know why I don't hate them? Because they have 2 championships. What do I got to hate? You've never really been a competition for us when it comes to basketball. You talk about other sports, yeah, they kill us in football. Giants murdered us in 2 Super Bowls. But we're talking about basketball. What do I got to hate? I don't understand why they're hated on. I agree with you on that because maybe because they're cocky and they think they're good and they've never really won much. And it's such a big market team, like Jamie said, like New York. But I definitely don't hate them. I don't really.
It also could be because of the fans, because fans from New York, they get very rowdy. So it could be because of that. Maybe the fans are kind of cocky. We saw all that smack they were talking on Trae Young in the postseason a few years, just last year and the year before, and then Trae Young knocks him out. So it could stem from the fans being.
Yeah, the fans are definitely ruthless. Spike Lee is the definition of a New York basketball fan. He is. There's so many videos. There's so many videos of him just almost dying just of the pain of being a New York Knicks fan. Jumping into my second random NBA thought, records are meant to be broken. We all know that, but it's going to be very close to impossible to beat LeBron's scoring record. He was the youngest to reach 10K points, youngest to reach 20K points, youngest to reach 30K points, and the youngest to reach his record. Kareem did it in 3 or 4 more seasons, and he just killed that record. Granted, he's hurt right now, so it slows down his pace a little bit, but he's going to probably get around 44 to 45,000 points total in his career. And he's doing this, and he'll be done probably around his early 40s. That's when Kareem got the record, basically. So I think it's insane. He came into the league averaging 20 points per game. That's very rare. Paulo Banchero came into the league averaging around 19, and that's still rare. LeBron came in averaging 20.9, and he's been putting up high-scoring averages for 20 years now. That's even more rare to be that consistent, and more of them have been close to 30 points per game, not 20. This season, he's averaging 29.9, basically 30 points per game at 38 years old. Who's doing that? Maybe Tom Brady if you put him in the NBA. Sorry, I had to put my Tom Brady plug. I had to put my Tom Brady plug. No, but for a real note, it's who's doing that for that long of a time? No one. That's why I think it's one of the records that it will be broken eventually, but I think it might take 1.5 or 2 lifetimes. We won't see it.
I don't know if it'll take that long, only because even as we see it nowadays, kids are just getting more and more athletic, and kids are getting so much more into the sport at younger ages. So I feel like it's gonna happen at some point, just because kids nowadays are way more athletic than they were in 2004. So eventually, I do think it will be broken. I don't know if it's going to take 2 lifetimes.
I don't know, because
but I could definitely see it being 50, 60 years before it does happen.
The closest person to LeBron's track is Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
But he's still not even close when you compare it to how fast he got how fast he got to his point totals. Mm-hmm. He's just the only one that's averaging the most points at a young age, but he's still not even close to the pace that LeBron was at his age, because LeBron came into the league at 18 years old. Luka came in a year and a half older. So unless they rescind the high school thing, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because you got to be able to come in when you're 17, 18 years old.
You say that he was coming into the league averaging 20 points a game, and who else is averaging 20 points a game as a rookie? Paulo Banchero. He's going to break the record.
No, but you know what I mean? But he's also a year and a half older.
Yeah.
So that's the thing you got to keep in mind is LeBron came out of high school. That's not you can't do that anymore. They've been talking about it in the new bargaining agreement coming out this summer. They might rescind that. So high school players should come into the NBA. That'd be really, really interesting. But right now you can't. So until they take that away, if they do, I think it's going to be very hard. And even then, it's still going to be almost impossible. Nick, do you have any takes on this?
No, I agree with you. I think that this record will probably never get broken.
Because he's only going to get more, too.
Yeah.
Because he's going to play another 3-4 years. So that's all I got on mine.
All right, so for my second thought, is LeVar Ball the greatest father of all time? Outside of my father, I do think LeVar Ball is up there. Only because he's done so much for his 3 kids, LaMelo Ball, Lonzo Ball, and LiAngelo Ball. he brings up 3 of his sons to be absolutely generational basketball talents, other than LiAngelo. Especially coming out of high school. It was just insane to see. And they were all on the same high school teams as Seton Hall. And, they go... Chino Hills, sorry, Seton Hall. Not Seton Hall. It's Chino Hills. And they're absolutely unstoppable. He gets 2 out of the 3 sons to be top 3 picks in the draft. And LiAngelo Ball obviously didn't really get the same chance because he did some stupid things. He wasn't as good, but he also did some stupid things that rescinded him from being drafted. So I do think with what LeVar Ball has done for his sons, especially in the media with being over the top and stuff like that, and getting that hype on his kids for them to be the top 3 picks, I just think with all of that, he should be in that conversation for greatest father of all time.
You definitely said that very well. It's like, looking back on it, people thought he was crazy with the Big Baller brand, going on First Take, going on Colin Cowherd's The Herd Show, all these different shows, talk shows. Everyone thought he was crazy with his outlandish just personality, but look where his sons are. 2 out of his 3 sons were top 3 picks. LiAngelo didn't really get the good end of the stick. He wasn't as good and had some legal trouble.
I mean, he still made the G League.
Still made the G League, but because of his brothers, give him a chance. But with that said, LaMelo, he's a top 10 point guard. Lonzo, when healthy, he probably is a top 10 point guard. Just
top 15.
Top 15. He's got the passing and defense ability. The scoring has gotten a little better over the years, but sadly we couldn't see how that progressed this season. But when LaMelo's healthy, man, he could probably be... He's a top 10 point guard right now, but he could work his way up to top 5 because he has all the intangible skills. He's definitely the best brother. Yeah, great, good point. I'd say LeVar is probably one of the best dads of all time because he hyped his kids up so much. But damn, they worked for it and they earned it. It's not like they hyped him up and they were bad.
I mean, during their peak hype, when Lonzo was on the Lakers,
in middle school.
Yeah, he even got them a WWE appearance. They got on the show, they beat up the Miz, and he hyped him up for a crowd that wasn't really into basketball, just to get their names out there. So
that's not easy to do.
That's not easy to do. So I think LeVar Ball should definitely be in that GOAT father conversation. Nick, what do you think?
As far as the NBA goes, yeah, for sure. I think he's one of the most entertaining people over the last 10 years, in the sports world. But, I do mess with how he got his sons, to being mainstream players while they were just really kind of not even known like that. And now we see one of them's an all-star caliber player. The other one's one of the best point guards in the NBA. So,
right.
Yeah. Moving on, though, to number 3. What if Sam Presti never traded James Harden? In my eyes, I don't know if it would cause immediate success because they would have had to have lost Serge Ibaka. So, I don't know if OKC would have won that next season, but I think probably the next year down the line, they probably would have integrated James Harden into the starting 5. Let's say KD still gets injured that next season. Then we're looking with Russ and James Harden. I feel like eventually a championship would have came to the team. I just don't know exactly when, especially with all the injuries that each individual player had early on.
Would James Harden still turn into his MVP caliber type of talent?
But I think he'd be still a 20-point per game scorer. Would
he be integrated into the starting lineup? You think?
Yeah, he would.
Yeah, I mean a OKC starting lineup of Russ, Harden, KD. Who's their power forward?
It would have been Ibaka, but they would have traded him.
Yeah,
they would have picked
but
Harden.
I mean, nonetheless, that starting lineup, that's 3 of the top 40, top 30 players of all time in one lineup. So I do think that's a championship-winning team. That's a dynasty right there. But
we see how
they got rid of it too early.
You see how it's worked though with 3 top 10 players in the NBA. Doesn't really.
I mean, the Golden State Warriors did it, so.
Yeah, because they had guys that could counteract those mentalities and really make a team. But if you look at the history of Harden, Westbrook, and Durant, they're not really the most team players. Because if Durant never goes to the Warriors, he doesn't have 2 championships.
Well, I do think if they keep that team together, they do. I don't think Harden becomes as big of a diva if he stays on the Thunder, only because he knows he's playing with
his
2 other
generations.
Yeah, I think his ego stays in check because he didn't become a diva until he got his own team in Houston and he started doing all this flopping and whatever that everybody hated him for. So I do think alongside Westbrook and Durant, he becomes a team player and dishes the rock, shoots a lot of threes. And becomes an NBA champion, something that he still hasn't been able to do.
Does Westbrook still become a top 3-4 point guard.
No, probably not.
No?
Just because he would be known as a sidekick, so probably not.
But at the same time, he does get a championship.
Does he? I don't know if they do.
Only because they were dominant at so many points. We saw what they could do in the regular season. KD with an MVP. All three of them became MVPs at some point.
Yeah, but Harden and Westbrook got that when they were on their own.
Exactly, but
never together.
I think if you have the talent, nonetheless, it could happen. I'm not saying they still would be MVPs, but they all have the talent to do it. And all of that talent together is just a lot. There's probably going to end up scoring like 150 points a game. And
it is, but we've seen so many times in the NBA where teams have all these big threes and it just hasn't panned out.
Who were the other teams in the East at the time? Because I know you had the LeBron Heat, and they ended up disbanding not too long after. I do think they end up beating the Cavs with LeBron, only because KD and LeBron have faced each other in the finals, so that's an even matchup. But then I think the talent of Russ and Harden overtake that of Kyrie and Kevin Love. So,
but can they still even get past the Warriors?
That's tough. Well, I think they do now that KD's not on the Warriors.
I know, but they couldn't do it the year before, and that's why KD left to go. He couldn't beat him, so he joined him.
I think with a more developed Harden, they could.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree with that because that's what OKC needed was a third scorer because when KD went cold and Westbrook had to carry, it didn't look good for them. And then they had Dion Waiters out there shooting 20 shots. So
exactly.
Jumping into my third random NBA thought, Nick, I'm sorry, but it's a random NBA thought, so I'm going to direct this towards you a bit because I know you're going to have a lot to say on this. Excuse me. The Clippers fall to 0-5 since signing Westbrook, right? Again, I'm not putting all the blame on him, but this is random NBA thoughts and just came to my head yesterday in the library when I was writing this up. There seems to be, for the most part, every team Westbrook has touched since leaving Oklahoma City has underperformed, and hasn't really turned into what teams thought. You can go down the list. Rockets.
I disagree with the Rockets. They overperformed, I think.
What'd they win?
I mean, they weren't expected to win.
I don't think they were expected to win.
Yeah, the Lakers were so good that year.
I think going up that far in the bubble when LeBron had that much talent around him, I think they should get some recognition for
I
that.
agree with
when
that.
It was legit just Russ and Harden.
Exactly.
That's not true. He had great role players around him.
I don't know.
They only had P.J. Tucker and Robert Covington.
Eric Gordon.
He was terrible that season.
But still, Rockets. Wizards, I will say, Russ did well because no one really expected him to be anything, and he helped put that team in relevance.
Deadly.
I agree. Lakers, complete underperform. And now with the Clippers 0-5, both of you said, now they're my championship favorites.
I agree. Still,
I'm
not going to count a team out with only 5 games.
Yeah, I just think they need more time to acclimate. We saw what Westbrook did, 27-10 with no Kawhi Leonard against a very, very good Sacramento team. They've only been facing the top teams in the West outside of the Timberwolves, obviously, but.
Okay.
They've been facing a lot of high-level talent and staying into the game with such new.
But they're 33-33, and take Westbrook out of the equation. He's been there for 5 games. They're still 33-33. So what was wrong before Westbrook? They still weren't good.
Well, then exactly, it's not Westbrook's fault then.
Fair. Let me rephrase it. I mean, my point was they're 0-5 with Westbrook. So, and he hasn't really done much.
I also want to make it be known.
Really good, I think.
Yeah, even though Russell Westbrook's been playing good, I saw a stat yesterday that he's lost 15 straight games. Russell Westbrook.
So when does it become his fault? Because every team he's touched since the Thunder has been underperforming. He hasn't won anything.
I just don't think it's his fault.
He still hasn't. He didn't win anything with the Thunder either.
I just don't think it's his fault.
That's definitely not his fault.
He went to the finals with the Thunder. He had to face such a good Heat team.
I'm just saying, when does it not become a little bit of his fault?
It's just not his fault.
It's never his fault, though.
It's not.
I just do think.
But how can you say that, though?
I think
because it's just in the statistics. How is it his fault? I don't get that.
I do think he could clean up on the turnovers a little bit.
And that's it, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's really it because. I'm pretty sure against Sacramento he had 7 turnovers, which could definitely be cleaned up.
In his first game with a new team.
Yeah, but at the same time he had a double-double, triple-double, or whatever it was. So, I just think cleaning up the turnovers could be it, because a turnover in a 1-point game, like they've had against Sacramento twice now, is very costly. So, they've only had close games. It's not like they're getting blown out. So
I don't know how you can say a team that's 33-33. Take Westbrook out of the equation for right now. I don't know how you can say a team that's 33-33 is a championship contender because they still were mid before Westbrook, a week ago.
Kawhi Leonard was hurt for a good amount of the season too. So,
but he's S tier, not to rehash.
He is an S tier.
Alrighty.
All right. So my third thought. What if Mickey Mouse General Manager James chose football over basketball? So we all know the legend of LeBron James in basketball terms. We all know what he's done. But as a football player, he was like supposed to be a 5-star prospect. He was a tight end in high school. Absolutely sensational. 6'9" tight end. Are you kidding me? With that much athleticism, could easily go down as the greatest of all time. We've seen what basketball players can do at the tight end position. Guys like Tony Gonzalez, who's probably the greatest tight end of all time. Antonio Gates, who's the all-time touchdown scorer at the tight end position. Mo Alley Cox, who's dominating right now at the tight end position. So we see what they can do, but somebody like LeBron James has the athleticism and the height we've never seen before at the tight end position in the NFL. So what if he chose to go the football route? He has come out and said that the reason he didn't go with football is because his quarterback in high school sucked. He already had offers from Ohio State to go play. So what if he chose football? Would he be the same legend?
No,
I don't think so.
No, because if you're playing like tight end, you're not going to be a legend like that. No matter how good you are, the guys like Tony Gonzalez, Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Gates, all these great tight ends, you're still not going to be known as the GOAT. Travis Kelce, I guess now, you're still not going to be known as the GOAT compared to like quarterbacks or wide receivers or some great defensive player. I don't know. I feel like I just don't see it. Now, when I have a question, I'll let Nick say his opinion, though, because I'm going to ask you after the question. But, Nick, what's your opinion on this?
I mean, NFL players don't play as long, so I just feel like he wouldn't be as highly paid. His name wouldn't have as much value to it. He wouldn't have all these nicknames and all this other stuff coming out, so I don't think he'd be what he is.
Now, let me pose this. Jalen Suggs, he was probably the closest thing to choosing football over basketball because he was a 5-star quarterback. Like, he was insane. What's your take? And he was a quarterback, too, so he'd be very well known. What's your take?
So, being a quarterback in high school is, I'm not going to say it's easy because it's obviously not, but it's pretty easy to get your name out there. Suggs was a very special talent. He's related to all-time great linebacker Terrell Suggs.
Really?
He's their cousins. So shout out my roommate Jake Riker, big Ravens fan. They're related, so football ran in his family. It's in his blood, and he was a 5-star prospect at that quarterback position. But we've seen a lot of 5-star quarterback prospects flop. So, the Matt Barkleys, the Brian Hoyers, the Blaine Gabberts. So, who's to say he wouldn't been one of those flops? I'm not saying it's guaranteed he would have been a flop, because if he did pan out, Jalen Suggs would be one of the biggest names out there, especially being an NFL quarterback. He'd be a way bigger name now than he is in the NBA. Yeah. So, it's a very opposite side of the spectrum, because what if Jalen Suggs were to become the greatest quarterback of all time?
What if Mahomes played baseball? You could go down the rabbit hole with all these different guys who are
multi-athletes. What if Kyler Murray played baseball? Because he was I'm pretty sure he was a first-round pick by the Oakland Athletics.
Oh, yeah, Athletics.
So, it's a very deep rabbit hole you can go down with all these athletes in multi-sports. So I do think LeBron James is the biggest case, only because he had the offers from D1 colleges, especially title contending ones like Ohio State. So I just think it's a really fun thing to talk about.
I agree.
So I had 6 questions like y'all too, but I'm merging these two. Okay. So, no players from the mid to early 90s besides Penny Hardaway and David Robinson will be considered stars in today's NBA. And I think that DeRozan, if he played in the 80s, will be considered an all-time great.
I do agree with that. I think with the way DeMar DeRozan plays today, especially being a mid-range specialist, like MJ was, he'd be absolutely phenomenal. But I don't really agree with the David Robinson and the who was the other one? Penny Hardaway. I do think they'd be great today. I'm not saying they wouldn't be, but I think you got to count in guys like Hakeem Olajuwon, who completely rejuvenated what it was to be a center. I just think a lot of his moves today would still translate.
Yeah.
No, only because he could score so well. He taught a lot of these guys footwork things. He taught Kobe Bryant his footwork. And he taught a lot of the guys today, too. He taught Dwight Howard a lot of his footwork skills. And Dwight Howard was an all-time great center in Orlando. So I do think there's some other guys that I got to think about, obviously. But there's more than just David Robinson and Penny.
Yeah, I would say DeMar DeRozan 1,000%. I agree with that one. He would definitely be, I don't know where he'd be on the totem pole, but I think he'd probably be a top 10, 15 player in the 80s, because his mid-range, like Jamie just said, mid-range is some of the best we've ever seen, and he's playing in today's NBA. Imagine if that was in the 80s against guys where that was like what you really did. There was really no three-point scoring besides like Bird and, Reggie Miller, guys like that. Very rare. Del Curry. So, yeah, definitely DeRozan would probably be a killer. Even more now. He's probably like a top 20 player right now. He'd probably be a top 10, 12 player in the 80s. He'd probably be just a bit better, because if you know what I mean. But
I think Chris Mullin would have translated too. I think he'd be like a Klay Thompson today. Just if he got more opportunities to shoot the rock, especially in the same Warriors system, I do think he'd be up there with like a Klay Thompson or even better, just because he could create his own shot. So, I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's other guys that I can't think of, but I mean, Chris Mullin I think is a good example.
Yeah, I agree with that. Moving on to my number 4, random NBA thought. I'm confident, right? But still a nervous and skeptical Celtics fan over here. If Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown never win a championship together, they will go down as the most disappointing duo in NBA. One of the most disappointing duos in NBA history. Both are all-stars, averaging 26-plus points per game, and they can drop 50 on any given night. Brown is almost at 27 points per game, and Tatum just cracks over 30 at 30.1 points per game. Guys, if Brown and Tatum never win a championship together, we just dropped 2 in a row, we will go down as one of the most disappointing teams and also, like, in an error, and also one of the most disappointing duos in NBA history. Because both of them are top 10 players in the NBA.
I think so. They're both just so talented, and they have such a well-built roster around them. Just for them to fail, I do think that they would be a disappointment. I'm not going to sit here and say they'd be the biggest disappointment.
No, I
because
think
you obviously have the Harden, Kyrie, KD Nets.
Big 3.
Yeah, a bunch of other big threes.
You could say Russ and KD. I was actually looking at that. I was going to talk about them, but I was like, we don't need to go back and forth with all these different duos because there's so many ones. But I was looking at Russ and KD. That's what KD's MVP season. KD averaged around like 30 points per game. Russ averaged around like 23 or 24. So these guys are both doing more than what KD and Russ did. So I don't know.
Because, like, I think they would be disappointing if they never were to win one, but there's a lot of older big threes that don't get talked about enough that didn't pan out, like the Charles Barkley, Scottie Pippen, Hakeem Olajuwon Rockets. They never won anything.
These guys are so young.
The New York Knicks with Ewing, Starks, and Oakley never won anything. So I do think they would be up there with the most disappointing, though, just because Tatum and Brown are so talented and so young, and to waste all of that, it would just be,
What's your take on this one, Nick?
Yeah, I agree. I think they'd probably be up there with 2010 Lakers, Nets, and just I don't know. I think you got to give them time, though. They're young. By the time they're 28, 29, they'll be finals locks every year. So
I don't know. With teams like the Magic and Pistons, any day now, ready to sprout.
Especially the Magic. Jeez.
Yeah.
All right. So for my next thought, I was originally going to go with. Actually, I'll talk about that one later. I was originally going to go with what would the NBA look like right now if Kawhi Leonard was still a Raptor, but I think I'm going to pivot to a different one. I think Brandon Roy would be a top 10 shooting guard all time if not for injuries. And alongside that, I do think the Blazers would be an NBA dynasty if not for injuries. So Brandon Roy, let's talk about him real quick. One of the most talented scorers in the late 2000s, early 2010s. He did it all. Very reminiscent of a Tracy McGrady when he was in Orlando. Very reminiscent to a James Harden nowadays. Obviously didn't get the same amount of shots as Harden did, but same talent. And then as for the Blazers in general, you have LaMarcus Aldridge, who was one of the most talented bigs in the NBA at the time. And then you have Greg Oden, former first overall pick, absolutely dominant when playing, but was injured so often. Alongside Brandon Roy, they were injured all the time. I'm pretty sure they only played like 50 games together in like the 3 or 4 years they were a team. So I think if they were healthy throughout that entire time period,
and then
they go down. Yeah, and then they eventually get Damian Lillard, young Damian Lillard, who was phenomenal his rookie year. I do think they win at least 2 championships, the Blazers.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't think they're beating LeBron in 2010.
I don't know. With Brandon Roy, as talented as he was, and then Oden and LaMarcus Aldridge, that's the best big man duo in the league if they do stay healthy. And then Damian Lillard eventually. I mean, come on. That's just so much talent that it can't go unnoticed.
It definitely can't go unnoticed, but I don't know if you're beating like prime LeBron, Wade, Bosh.
I mean, the no-name Mavericks did it with J.J. Barea locking up LeBron. So.
You still had Dirk.
Exactly,
MVP.
but at this point, At this point, you have Roy, who's one of the best scorers in the league, Aldridge, one of the best rebounders and shot blockers in the league, and Odin, who was phenomenal at really everything at that center position until he got hurt.
I'd say their biggest help would be their defense would be amazing.
Their defense would be awesome,
But I don't know
especially
if they could,
down low.
I don't know if they could outperform, like, offensively, the Heat.
I mean, we'll never know.
You're right, we'll never know. We can 2K simulate it.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're offensively they'll be able to match up. Because even if you bring in rookie Damian Lillard, he was not Damian Lillard that we see today.
I'm pretty sure they also had Nick Batum when he was young and was an all-star.
he was
Patty
good.
Mills, yeah.
Patty Mills. So I just think they had the role players as well.
Yeah, I know. Very, very, very valid point. I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, you'll never know. Shout out my brother, though. He's a big Randall Roy fan.
All right, moving on to my last one. I think that the Pistons could revive the era of the Bad Boys with this new, like, big roster that they have that they're forming. I do believe if they get the first round pick, they're going to get Wembanyama. But if they don't, they still have a really nice core to build around. And if I'm them, if I do get that first, I might trade down and look to get like a forward, a small forward, because you could run it like a Cade, Ivy, Brandon Miller, Durant, Wiseman lineup, and that's one of the best young lineups.
Durant's been killing it, too.
Yeah, I don't know if they need Webby just because, like you just said, they have Durant, Wiseman. They have so many bigs.
Yeah.
I don't know if
And
they,
then
and
Cade
Bagley.
maybe.
He's
Yeah,
big.
and Stewart.
Screw Bagley.
Stewart, right? I think Stewart's going to go somewhere else,
Probably.
though, because he could be a starter.
Yeah. They just have so much young talent that they could develop. And defensively, that team's really good. Wiseman, although not the best offensively, obviously, he's been a little bit of a bust. He's still great defensively. Durant, he's a big body. Although he's a little undersized, he's built like a Shaquille O'Neal. So I do think he's good defensively. Cade Cunningham, I mean, he was what? He wasn't the first pick, was he?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was top 3.
Who was the first pick? Was it Cunningham and then Mobley, or was Mobley
Wiseman.
first?
Yeah, no.
Wiseman wasn't in that class.
I think it was Scotty.
I thought Scotty was like the third pick.
Cade Cunningham.
I know Mobley was second.
Yeah. I'm going to just say Cade was first.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he
He
was.
was the first, yeah.
Yeah. So Cade Cunningham is obviously a generational talent.
Cade Cunningham, Anthony Edwards. Oh, no, wait.
Anthony Edwards.
This is telling me first round picks.
Yeah, so
Cade Cunningham, yeah.
Yeah, Cunningham, obviously a generational talent coming out of Oklahoma State. I think he has the potential to be not just a top 5 point guard. I think he could be the best point guard in the league if developed right, obviously. He has all the talent as a 6'7" point guard. He could do it. But alongside of Brandon Miller and an Ivy, that could be a fantastic team.
Like I said, the Pistons and Magic are scary.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be scary for the next 5-10 years while they develop. It's going to be insane. My 5th one, Vegas needs an NBA team, guys. We've been talking about it. The NBA's talked about it. Everyone's talking about it. Vegas or some city like it, I'm going with Vegas because they already have a football team, a hockey team. Why wouldn't they have an NBA team? That's where the summer league is. They already know there's a market there. Yes, there's majority of tourists in Las Vegas. There's also a lot of people that live in the surrounding towns and cities out there in the desert. I don't know. They need an NBA team. Like I said, summer league is booming there every summer. They already have a market for it. What's your take on it? And are they going to create a new team, or are they going to move a team there? That's the question.
If they're going to move a team there, I think I was thinking one of the California teams, but
So those are already big markets.
the Clippers already are building a new arena.
Right.
Sacramento's good where they are.
Yeah.
I don't think any of those
Yeah, I
big
don't
state
think any of
teams
them
are going to
are
move.
moving.
I think they get a new
But
team.
I don't think that. I think that they're going to keep the summer league there, and I think that they're going to look more towards the
East
north. The east. They're going to look more towards the east to build a team out there that doesn't have one, like a Nashville, Virginia, one of those type of teams.
But Nashville, Tennessee's already got Memphis.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So probably more like somewhat over there. So that's what I think at least, and then maybe Seattle.
Now, could they bring the Supersonics back and put them in Vegas? Because
No,
I don't
wouldn't
think
do that because everybody wants a team in Seattle.
Yeah, I was going to say, I
Even
wouldn't
if
put
it
the
was
Sonics in Vegas.
Seattle like something else, they just want a team in Seattle.
I think if you do introduce a new team, you got to bring in 2, just so you can even out the division. So I do think you put one in Seattle, you put one in Vegas. Honestly, I don't know, because those are 2 Western teams.
You'd have to put the Pelicans in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, you'd put the Pelicans in the East, and then that'll even it out. So I do think that would be what you have to do.
Yeah, it's very interesting to think about. I really want a team in Vegas because it's like they have the market. They prove it, first off, with the NHL the Vegas Golden Knights, and now with the Raiders who moved from California to Vegas. They've already proved to have a humongous market. They had the NFL draft there last year. It's Las Vegas. I don't need to tell you the awards or the things that go on in Vegas. Everyone knows there's a market in Vegas. I don't need to go down the list of million different reasons why. But I just think they deserve an NBA team. The Summer League works. It's going to be exciting to see what they do. I don't expect like a answer you to stick with for the rest of your life, but if they were to do a redraft of guys, who do you think, what type of player in your mind, just off the top of your head, would be like one of the first picks to get drafted to these new expansion teams?
If like the entire league were to redraft?
No, so you could only, when the teams expand, you can only save 10 players on your roster.
Yeah.
Who would be like a player you think would be one of the first picks? I know, sorry, I put you guys on the spot.
So like one of the really good role players,
like,
honestly.
Probably Peyton Pritchard or...
yeah, I mean, you can only say you can save 10 guys, so you'd probably be one of the guys you don't save.
Him or maybe like Shake Milton, somebody like that.
Shake Milton would be good. Maybe a Davion Mitchell.
Either way, they'd try to get the first pick the next year.
Yeah.
Sorry to put you guys on the spot. I was just curious about that.
Yeah, that's a good thought.
That's all I got for my five.
Oh, yeah. So my last one, what if the referees didn't rig the 2002 Western Conference Finals? Obviously the one against the Kings and the Lakers where Shaq and Kobe ended up getting their a ring. And would Sacramento be a dynasty? They had all of the talent. The Peja Stojakovic, who at one point was a top 3 MVP candidate, Chris Webber, Jason Williams, Mike Bibby. They had so much talent really everywhere, and they couldn't get it done because they were obviously screwed out of a championship by the referees in a gambling ring. So would they be a dynasty? And do they beat a pretty mediocre Nets team in the finals?
What's your take, Nick?
No, I despite I know that it's. I don't want to sit here and say it's rigged. Honestly, I mean,
it was. They came out and said it.
I don't know. I'd have to have watched the series more to be completely honest with you. They just go off of like a skepticism type of thing.
No, the Lakers had like 25 fourth quarter free throws to the Kings like 5. And Mike Bibby ended up with a broken nose in the end of it because he took an elbow from Kobe and it didn't get called.
That's just bad refs.
I mean, yeah.
No, because the ref, they literally came out and admitted he was gambling on it.
Yeah, that's tough.
I do think they at least win the finals if it wasn't rigged because the Nets, all they had was Jason Kidd and Kenyon Martin. That's really all you have to face. When you have Stojakovic, Weber, all these other big names, Jason Williams, who was one of the best facilitators in the league, Bibby, who could shoot.
I don't know if you still beat the Lakers, though.
Yeah, but they do. They were already up 3-2 in the series. It wasn't until Game 6 where it started to get rigged.
Mm.
And they were up. They were up 15 at one point in Game 6, and until the fourth quarter when the Lakers got 28 free throws.
Yeah, I mean it's hard because obviously I wasn't alive. I was born a year later. Wasn't watching basketball. I know you say it's rigged, and I know it came out that way. I don't know. It's just hard to. I don't know. It's Kobe. I don't.
They obviously beat the Lakers. They were up like 10 going into the fourth, and I just think they easily win that game. And Robert Horry hits the game winner in the 7th game. Because Game 7, I'm pretty sure, was rigged as well, if I'm not wrong. Because the Lakers got a good amount of free throws in that game, too. And the Kings still only ended up managing to lose by like 1 or 2. So the Kings just had so much talent at that point, I just think. Because they even had a young Hito Turkoglu, who was on the up and coming. He was on the rise, and I don't think he ever ends up in Orlando. And if the Kings win a ring, I think he stays. So, it's just hard to tell.
Do you have a final one, Nick? I have one more if you have any more.
I don't, because I combined those two, but y'all go ahead.
All right, I got one more for you guys. Do you think AAU, a lot of players come into the league injured or have injury problems, especially the younger generation of guys? I'd say from guys like Andrew Wiggins' generation up. So they're probably in their late 20s up to rookies now. That AAU generation. Do you say that causes a problem for load management now and guys being chronically injured time and time again in the NBA?
Ooh.
I think it 100% does. There's guys starting in like middle school to then coming into the NBA and continuing that are just playing basketball every weekend, every day, nonstop.
Yeah.
I mean, but I feel like that's kind of what it takes to get to the NBA, though.
Right, but that wasn't happening back like in the 90s and all that. They were just playing regular high school basketball. They weren't going to tournaments, playing 5 games every weekend. They weren't for a weekend all year long. They weren't then going to play high school basketball during the week. Like 2 different leagues they're in for the past, I'd say, 10 to 15 years, that range. Up until now, just the amount of stress you're putting on your bodies. And the picture right here is Lonzo, LaMelo, and LiAngelo. Could that be a reason why Lonzo has chronic foot problems? Could that be a reason why LaMelo has chronic ankle problems? Just broke his ankle.
So I think the reason, I think AAU is still important because it's gotten the names out there of a lot of NBA talents, like you say, Lonzo and LaMelo. AAU has really got their names out there along with high school. So I'm not sure if they don't do AAU, if they're still as big name talents as they are.
No, I agree with that.
And there's other guys like Mikey Williams who are huge now because of AAU, Bronny James.
Blue chips, shout out.
Yeah, the blue chips. So there's still a lot of big names to come out of the AAU scene. And I just think it's a big reason as to why they're getting that recognition and they're being drafted so high. So obviously, I don't think they should be playing as much AAU games because they're getting hurt so often. They're playing like 2-3 games a weekend, and you can't be doing that.
No, I definitely agree. It's help get their name out there, help expand their market, help expand their draft stock and eligibility, and people colleges wanting him. But I think there's a detrimental side where just playing so much basketball, by the time you're 22, your body's already 28.
Yeah,
that's my last one right there.
All right, that is it for our random NBA thoughts. And I want to give a big thank you all for tuning in to WVUA 90.7 FM and the Full Court Press podcast. We will be back Friday with our current starting center tier list. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at FCP_podcast_UA and on TikTok at FCP_podcast. This is Jamie, Alex, and Nick signing out.
Peace. See you guys.
WVUA FM, Tuscaloosa.